What's going on, guys? Today we are back with another book review. This time we're standing and we're going over a fiction book. Typically, I like to read a nonfiction and a fiction book at the same time. I read my nonfiction in the morning and my fiction as I'm winding down, getting ready for bed. And today we're going over Tender is the Flesh by Agustina Bazterrecea. Tender is the Flesh is originally written in Spanish. This is the English translation, and I just picked it up one day from Barnes & Noble. I walked in, I had nothing to read, and before I understood what the phrase recommended by TikTok was, it was sitting there on the all pretty on the shelf with the little folded paper. If you've been into Barnes & Noble, you know what I'm talking about. And it said something like, as seen on TikTok, or the viral TikTok book, or something like that. And just be careful when you read that. Take that viral on TikTok with a grain of salt. So if you've clicked on this video, I assume that you know the premise at least. So basically, Tender is the Flesh is about a dystopian alternate reality where the government claims that all contact with animals are all disease ridden, and that any contact with animals will therefore get you sick. So people are not allowed to have pets. They're not allowed to consume animal products. And then we'll get into the rest of it once we start talking about spoilers. One thing that I did really appreciate about this book is very easy to digest. It's written very straightforward, very easy to understand. So if you're like me and you're a horror literature fan, then this is a really good one because it's so easy to digest, to just lay in bed or lay on the couch and blow through a chapter as you're trying to turn your brain off to go to sleep. Okay, so we're going to get into spoilers. Before we do that, if you just want my opinion on the book, it was all right. I wouldn't read it again. Let's say like 95% of the book was pretty good, and the ending just freaking killed it for me. People all online on Goodreads and on Reddit talk about how deep and profound and complex the ending is, and I just don't agree. I think it was a very weak ending for a very, very cool premise. So yeah, we'll get into it. If you want to read the book, go read the book, because we're getting into spoilers. 3, 2, 1, getting into spoilers. Loud crack first. There you go. So this book follows, our protagonist is Marcos. And Marcos's life is kind of rough at the moment. His son just died. After that, his wife leaves him. They don't get divorced, but she goes to live with her parents just because she needs space after the death of their son. And all at the same time, Marcos is being an executive at his company and also taking care of his dementia-stricken father. Now, since animal products aren't allowed to be consumed and animals aren't allowed to be kept as pets, the protein source in the reality of Tender is the Flesh is human meat. They call these humans heads, and it basically Marcos is an executive at a processing plant, and after the death of his son, it kind of he takes a step back from eating meat, not because he enjoys it, but because he's seen the gravity of death personally versus, I guess, the harsh reality of working in a slaughterhouse and seeing these head as a source of food solely. So they are these head, the quality of them is indicated by different marks on their body. The highest ones are marked with a giant brand across their forehead, and people are allowed to keep these heads, so these other human beings, as pets, so long as it's actually a very high status symbol to own a head. They have their tongues removed. They're never obviously integrated into human society, so they act like animals. And one day, there's a breeding center that is trying to win back Marcos's business, and they drop off one of the highest quality head at his house as a gift. So one thing that you're not supposed to do with these head, as we've previously discussed, is kind of treat them like the human being that they are. One thing that's a big no-no is naming them, because you name a pet, you get attached to it. I'm not sure if anyone out there's dealt with cows or pigs or chickens, but it becomes substantially harder to slaughter them after they've got a name and they essentially become a member of the family. Well, so this head that is given by the breeding center to Marcos, he ends up naming her Jasmine, and she is the highest quality of livestock that you can come across. And he starts off by giving her feed in his barn, and bathing her, and eventually moves her into his home to treat her like a human being, essentially. And then it's at this point that the book kind of starts to lose me. So he has a friend in town. Keep in mind, he's not actively living with his wife, but he has a friend in town that is a butcher. Her name is Spinell. Previously stated in the book that he had had an affair with this Spinell. Obviously, hurt his wife a lot. He's got all this pent-up aggression, and he goes and out of nowhere, just from what I understand, rapes this butcher and then suffers no consequences for it. And so that's weird. I thought that was a piece of the plot that there was no payoff for it. She is known to be super cold, super emotionless, but it happened and then it is never referenced again. She never tells his wife or anything like that. And throughout the course of this, he impregnates his head. He impregnates Jasmine and treats her well relatively throughout the entire course of the pregnancy. Him and his wife, they speak on the phone every once in a while, but while he is sort of taking care of Jasmine throughout her pregnancy, he's not answering his wife's phone calls and all this weird stuff. So one day, Marcos comes home from work, and Jasmine's actually giving birth. And this is where, for me, the plot was kind of going like this. It was catching my interest, and then it kind of starts to teeter off, and then it just takes a hard nosedive. Like, the end of this book totally ruined it for me. He comes home, Jasmine's giving birth. There are immense complications. And so he calls his wife and he's like, hey, you need to get over here right now. There are problems. Um, she rushes over and walks in. She's surprised because there's this human being with no tongue, with a giant brand across her forehead that is giving birth. And she immediately starts berating her husband, like, you're disgusting. You're going to get us killed by the government because you're having these inappropriate relations with this piece of food, essentially. And he looks at his wife and he goes, if we don't take care of this baby, if we don't save this baby, then we're going to lose our child. And the wife just kind of kicks it into gear. The wife grabs all these necessary materials to save the baby, and then the baby is born. And then at the end, Marcos grabs, I don't remember exactly what it is. I think it's just a big stick, and beats Jasmine to death. Now, I know that there might be some people out there that say, oh, well, the wife never really said if she approved of it or not. There, on the second to last page, it says that Cecilia, the wife, says, what a beautiful baby. You're the most adorable baby boy. What are we going to call you? Super weird that she has no idea why her husband is being distant. Shows up, he's essentially broken one of the deepest laws that everyone around them in society is bought into, and she's just okay because she has a baby now. I know that from the psychology standpoint of a parent, you know, you lose a child, horribly traumatic, and then having that replacement right there for the sake of the story can be convenient, but for me, it would have made so much more sense if 4 or 5 or 6 months into the pregnancy, he either brings his wife into the story to get her approval of it, or starts like dropping hints or something. But to me, it's very, very hard to believe that your estranged wife that you've been separated from for months, if not years, is all of a sudden okay that you've impregnated this, for the sake of the story, animal, and now you have a baby. What? Like, and that's where the book ends, so we don't see how they go about introducing this baby to their family or anything, because the wife hasn't been pregnant, and all of a sudden she just has a kid. She's been living with her parents. Like, anyway, ending horribly lost me. Again, very simple read. I appreciate that. Very easy to digest, but yeah, definitely not reading it again. So there's that. Cheers, and I guess we'll see you in the next one.